right. I think this one should work if I click. Shall I click? I have a few slides for you that I prepare. I don't know whether this is going to work. You will probably find out if... Can you guys tell me if it's going to work? Because I don't know. There, you got it? All right, so one behind. Here you go. All right, so in the few minutes I have for this conversation with you, I'd like to walk you through a bit of a project that we've been running with some colleagues. This is the project. It's called The Great Remobilization. It's a book that will be published by MIT University Press with two of my closest friends and colleagues, Olaf Groth from UC Berkeley and Terence C. from Halt and ESCP. The kind of work we're trying to do is really trying to engage us in the conversation about what the future will take, what the future will tell us, and how we envision this future to be. So pretty much, we're coming from the understanding that the future will definitely come from a number of different tension and discontinuities that we have experienced so far. We do see increasing inequality. We have seen that the global system doesn't work as well as before. So we start noticing that clearly we're going to see a phoenix rising from the ashes of what happened to be the model of the 20th century before. Now, when we go a bit deeper into that, we start looking at a few key ideas that I would like to share with you today. The first one is that science and scientific scrambles will continue to progress. We will see most likely one of the most important breakthroughs in science than we ever had before. Just to give you a point of reference, the moment that the company Moderna received the email with the code as an attachment of COVID-19, it took only 8 hours to produce actually the first prototype of vaccine. It shows you that ahead of us, the amount of acceleration we're going to have in science will be incredible. The question will be, will we keep this for ourselves or will we actually diffuse it more and more? So it's a question about the access of knowledge the way we might eventually envision. The next conversation is about the level of technocracies that have really impacted the world in the last few months. Will we have a world made of democracies in which we're going to have competence as a form of engagement, or will we have a smaller, more oligopoly kind of world in which more and more of our decision will happen in the hands of very few people? Power today is concentrated more and more in the hands of very few powerful people. The question will be whether our democratic system will survive the enormous amount of pressure to actually compete with the more technocracy country, less liberal, more capable of actually getting to some form of consensus. Now, the next conversation that we have is, how will we deal with a world in which China will continue to become a more relevant world in a way that we have never seen before? The rise of China and Asia is definitely something that we have to embrace. Europe and the United States are a little bit more anemic. We don't really know whether they'll be able to have a role that will be as foundational as the one we had in the past. So likely we want to imagine that the world ahead of us will see the predominance of a system that will be based on maybe a dual system between a West that will try to preserve some form of value and the rise in Asia that right now is becoming, by any measure, the most significant part of the world. What kind of world will we have when Asia will have become somehow the new world order? These are some of the questions we're engaging in the project and some of the questions we'd like us also to bring forward. We definitely see the role of China becoming larger than ever before, both in terms of the infrastructure they're working, the technology they're trying to build, and their propensity towards artificial intelligence. Moving on to the conversation we're going to have is, how will we actually reconstruct our world? Will we this actually reconstructing by collaborating globally, considering the level of interdependency we have achieved as a society, or will we actually start having more what we call engorged pockets of growth in which only few people will actually continue to thrive forward? We don't have the answer for this. What actually we believe is that the interdependency across country will continue to exist in matters like investment and trade, but we are moving into some degree of tribalism in which our cultural norms are becoming smaller and smaller by the day. So we're feeling a little bit more into a fragmentation period of our history in which, while we are connected more than ever before, we are much more divergent. And this tension between connection and divergence is actually critical. One example for this, and when we're talking about the trade war between the US and China, it looks like we're not really dealing with China properly, but the trade volume with China has increased. So how do we explain what is the face value of a conversation that seems to be problematic when in factual terms, the relationship keeps on growing. China and the US need each other interdependently much more than what we think, but the perception we have is much more of a fragmented world. Moving away from the conversation on this, we're going to move into globally, virtually, or not, where we preserve some degree of physical world. How will we measure and reconcile the physical with the virtual? One thing we're learning is that physical will continue to have a significant role in our life. We kind of want to go back to normal when we're thinking about the idea of going back to venues, conferences, going out for dinners, meeting friends, traveling. But what has really changed is that the virtual or the digital platform are largely taken over. And today, most of the value that used to be shaped by the industrial processes are now a digital mediated process. It means that more and more we'll see technology company taking a significant side of our life. From maybe controlling finance flows, to maybe having given access to opportunity we never had before, to ensuring risk. Today, platforms are becoming not wholly larger, but they're reconciling two schools of thoughts and strategy. The one related to the more competitive side, think about the Michael Porter view on the five forces, and the one related to resource base, where we're thinking about the competitive position we might have. Platforms are taking over completely this conversation. So how will we actually rethink our reconstruction is a question to be seen. Moving to the very final conversation I have, the data deluge the platform will create will be driving some degree of inefficiency. So today we see stock exchange markets moving faster and faster in the direction of excessive growth, but this growth is not easily cascading down into the everyday real economy, which basically means that we might have a market that grows very fast, but at the same time, people on the ground might suffer from not having the same opportunities. I remind you that inequality is an historical point of divergence with everything else. We've never been so unequal than we are right now in the world. And this is problematic because when inequality gets to a point in which it's really alienating the public opinion, we tend to see not only polarization happening, but also radicalization, which definitely leads to less democratic forms of exercises. As I'm moving towards the end of my conversation with you, are we going to have more of a new tech, new life? Are we dealing with a flexibility where we're looking at technology lifting us up and empowering us in a way we have never seen before? Will we see this more of a feudal system in which actually technology will repress us, it will remove away our liberty, will give away our privacy? I don't have the answer to this, but clearly these are conversations that will shape profoundly the way the market will work in the future. I leave you as have my very final minute of this conversation and this quick note with you about some of the reflection that we're having, where the world eventually will move in the next few years. Let's call it the next 10 years of definition in which we're really shifting from the 20th century tennis to the 21st. And the way we organize this in our mind is by what we call the 5 C's. The first one is COVID and the extension of COVID in our life. We can't forget that only in 2013, some country will see the first rollout of vaccines. We're still far from having any degree of symmetry. The second one is, of course, cognitive economy. An economy that is driven more by technology than what we used to see before. Will we be able to find a balance between technology and society, or will we see technology rapidly taking over? The third one is about cyber and cybersecurity. Most of our value is created digitally, so will we be able to really protect ourselves, or will we see the rise of cyber terrorism as a challenge? Number 4 is climate change. We have to say that climate change the last 20 years has been a failed paradigm because we think of reversibility of the climate. We should really wake up. We will never reverse the climate back. You cannot turn an omelette back into the eggs, isn't it? It's the same principle. We have to think about climate adaptation, climate restoration, climate mitigation, and how we'll be able to create economic viability for that. And the last one, as I mentioned, is C for China. So the 5 C's are constituting what we believe are going to be the major tenets of the next few years in what we call the post-pandemic design. But if you're really too interested about that, you should get the book when it's out. Thank you very much.